We're all good, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday class that shall not be named. We are now on YouTube. We just had a few seconds to redo our YouTube thing, but I think we are good to go. Fantastic. Welcome to everybody joining us on YouTube. Welcome, of course, to Gail, Michael, Stuart, Eva, and there was a Bob somewhere. Is that you, Stuart?
That was me. I had the wrong name somehow.
Okay.
Or I'm on Bob's line. I don't know which.
Maybe you're on Bob's line. That may be it. And hope everybody sorry I was gone last week and the week before. And then I think we had a problem with YouTube one week. I couldn't get on. But this week we're back. And I hope everybody's doing well. And I hope you had a good Labor Day weekend. Obviously, you didn't have as good of a Labor Day weekend as me because I went to Dragon Con, which is the best, most fun anybody as a human being can have. I'm going to promote it because it is so much fun. If you like dressing up in costumes and going to panels and doing nonstop fun, 12 to 14 hours every single day, then that is where you should be because it is that much fun. I'm going to show you my favorite costume. Let's see here. That's my favorite costume from the TV show Resident Alien. I went to the Resident Alien panel with the actors from the show wearing the costume. My wife made the mask.
Oh, wow.
Two people who had this mask because they don't make it commercially right now. So that was awesome.
Nice.
So that is me as a doctor. My mother always wanted me to be a doctor. Now I'm done. I've done everything now. My life's purpose is complete. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about the holidays over the next 2 weeks, if that's okay. And if anybody else has any other thoughts, I have some other things. I'm going to be at Ollie next month, teaching about Jews and what they were doing before they came to America, or before the United States of America. And then next week, I will have starting a 6-part course. It'll be 3 Mondays next month. I mean, this month, it'll be the 9th, 16th, and 23rd at 5 p.m. in the building or online. So you can do Zoom, YouTube, or live. We're going to do 3 courses in September, biblical history, and 2 on post-biblical history. And then November, we're going to do American Savannah and Israeli history. So just to promote those, so I have at least somebody besides my wife coming. And just in case you're wondering, she's not coming. So just in case you're wondering, she's not coming to any of those. So what we're going to do today is talk about the holidays as they're coming up. What we're going to do is talk about the holidays through the texts and look at some texts and where we see the origins of the holiday, plus where also we see what has evolved and what is original to the text. Because Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, other holidays are old, but they have changed over time. So we'll see a little bit of that. And hope everyone has a wonderful holidays. The holiday scheduling booklet is about to come out. They're just proofreading the final things. It is going to be a filled up time. So hopefully everybody will be able to join us in person. And if not, then certainly a lot of the stuff is going to be online. So let's go ahead and start off with Rosh Hashanah, which I think we know, obviously. We've been through it. But let's look at some text dealing with Rosh Hashanah and talk a little bit how it's evolved. So, as we know, for Rosh Hashanah, we say Lashana Tova, Tikatevu, or Lashana Tova, Tikatevu, V'tachatem. And these are greetings we continue, which I have said, you have said. So, when we first look at Rosh Hashanah, the first thing to remember is we know Rosh Hashanah as what? Rosh Hashanah. That's essential. That's obvious. That's Judaism 101. However, it was never called Rosh Hashanah in the Bible. So today it's Rosh Hashanah, head of the year. It's the birthday of the world. It's the day of judgment. It is the beginning of the new year. And none of this is found in the Bible at all. If you look at text 3, this comes from Leviticus chapter 23. And the Eternal spoke to Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, and the first day of the month, shall be a solemn rest unto you, a memorial proclaimed with the blast of horns, a holy convocation. You shall do no manner of servile work. It's not servile work. And you shall bring an offering made by fire unto the Eternal. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the holiday according to the biblical description, which tells us what? Almost nothing. Almost nothing. The only difference between this holiday and Shabbat is the blast of horns. You could also say it's given a specific date, but that's not such a big deal. And the 7th month on the first day. So the only two things here that give us any information about the holiday, it's on the first day of the 7th month, which we'll talk about in a second. And you blow the horn, and that's it. And it's a regular holiday, which means you don't work. And you bring a sacrifice. So, wow, it is very limited in the information it decides to give. Now, ironically, it is called the New Year. However, right here, before our very eyes, what do we see which makes us even question this?
7th month.
The 7th month on the first day of the month. So according to the biblical edict concerning Rosh Hashanah, it is not the New Year, according to the way we look at New Year's today. However, we must remember that for us, in our modern traditions, in our our solar calendar, we only have one New Year. That's January 1st is the first day of the year. In biblical times, there may have been multiple New Years, and certainly we'll read about that later. Eventually, Rosh Hashanah will be the new year, but at this point, we're not reading any of that. So what we're going to have to do is go to other texts to see where these ideas come from that give us the holiday. Now, is there anything about challah? No. Is there anything about apples and honey? No. Is there anything about the Day of Judgment? No. None of this. Is there anything about any of the other traditions? So when we get to the Talmud, we really have to look there and in other places later on to find these traditions. And so in the Talmud, in Rosh Hashanah, obviously we're going to find a lot of information because you have a whole tractate called Rosh Hashanah. This is the basis really for where we get the rest of the holiday. Now, to this day, though, what is probably the most famous moment of Rosh Hashanah, the one we look forward to, the one we ask our kids look forward to, that is the blowing of the shofar. So that is a tradition that is biblical in nature that we continue to keep. We don't know exactly the notes they played back then. Obviously, they didn't write down musical citations or notes, but we do know they blew the shofar. That is what we know for sure. So Most likely 3,000 years ago, they were blowing the shofar. Maybe even King David did it. It also doesn't say who's going to blow the shofar, and to this day, there are no rules about which Jewish person. It has to be somebody who's Jewish, and traditionally, probably was a man, but there's no rules about that. Now, here in the Talmud, in Rosh Hashanah 10b and through 11a, we find a very important piece to why we call it Rosh Hashanah. And that is, Rabbi Eliezer says, the universe was created in Tishrei. Rabbi Joshua says the universe was created in Nisan. There is a debate as to when the start of the universe is. Who wins this debate? The answer is Rabbi Eliezer in some ways, because Rosh Hashanah is going to be considered day one. So in other words, God creates the world in 7 days. Guess what day 8 is? Rosh Hashanah. However, Rabbi Joshua is going to win out over the calendar itself, because in Judaism, there's not just one new year, we have several. There are two main ones. In Tishrei in September, we have the birthday of the world, and that is one of the new years. But if we go by the calendar, we know in the Bible that Rosh Hashanah is the 7th month. So we have to have another new first day of the year. It has to be in the first month. And the first month is Nisan. So Nisan becomes the first month, and Tishrei the 7th month. So Nisan 1 is considered the beginning of the calendar year. Tishrei is considered the beginning of the universe. So they're basically 2 new years. And there are others. We won't talk about those right now. What holiday is in Nisan? It is in the spring. It is the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. The holiday of Passover, Pesach. But Pesach is in the middle of the month, because most holidays are in the middle of the month because it's a full moon and you can see at night. But Tishrei is the beginning of the world, so the new year in Tishrei has to be on the first day. So Rosh Hashanah is on the first day of Tishrei. So it's New Year in September, this year in October, New Year in April. And it just simply is on our Jewish calendar, we have multiple New Years. We have multiple New Years. And we might think, that's crazy, that's so silly. However, we only have one New Year on our current calendar, but that's actually a newer tradition than having multiple New Years. So if we asked 2,000 years ago and they said, wait, you only have one New Year? That's crazy. You should have multiple New Years. So it's just perspective. For us, one New Year is normal because that's what we're used to. But on the Jewish calendar, there's always been multiple one, at least for the last 1,500 to 2,000 years. Any questions? So when you sing the calendar song for Jude, when the kids learn the calendar, the months, they start off with Nisan. So the song starts out with Nisan and then Tishrei 7th. Okay. All right, so no questions. So we have 2 New Years. Rosh Hashanah is the creation of the world New Year, and Nisan is the start of the calendar we have New Year. All right, so let's go to the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the first part of the Talmud. So the Mishnah is a lot easier to determine the dates because it's written down from 200 to 220. So this text number 6 was written down. Now, when was it first thought of or created? That can be much further back, but we know the Mishnah was written over a 20-year period, 200 to 220. The Talmud was then added, and that took several hundred years. So the Mishnah, Text 6 says on Rosh Hashanah. What is important about that is it's now called Rosh Hashanah in the Mishnah because we have a whole tractate in the Mishnah. So this is chapter 1, verse 2, or section 2. On Rosh Hashanah, all creatures pass before God in single file, or alternatively, as sheep before a shepherd. As the verse states, he fashions the hearts of them all. He discerns all of their deeds. Aha! That is the first inkling of what aspect of Rosh Hashanah. They're trying to figure out or teach us why this holiday comes on the 1st of the month and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, comes on the 10th of the month. Why are we sheep going before a shepherd? What is it God doing to us on this day? God is judging us. The shepherd looks at the sheep to see if they're healthy, if they're pregnant, if if they're walking in the correct fashion. And so here it says in the Mishnah itself, so pretty early on, he discerns all of their deeds. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, where we see the Day of Judgment. And if you go higher here, you'll see that a lot of these things might come from Psalms, as they use Psalms as a reference, but they don't mention Rosh Hashanah in Psalms. All right, so from this text in the Mishnah and this text in the Talmud, we see that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of the creation of the world, one of the new years, and from this text in the Mishnah, we see it as the Day of Judgment. Now, that is very helpful for what we've seen now, but you always want to have more information. So here on text 7, we have Maimonides, one of the greatest sages in our history. In terms of rabbis, he is probably the most brilliant we've ever had. 12th century, born in Spain because of issues they were having there, ended up in Egypt. He became a brilliant physician, the greatest Talmudist of his age, and the greatest philosopher of his age, and he was basically a scientist as well. So he bridged the gap between science and religion better than anybody in history. And so we're going to see now Rambam is the acronym for Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. In English, a lot of people call him Maimonides or Moses Maimonides. So any of them right. Rambam or Maimonides are what he's usually called. And he's going to give us a little bit of wisdom here. Although the sounding of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is a scriptural decree without rational basis, and it nevertheless implies the following: arise, you who are fast asleep, and awaken you who slumber. Search your deeds, repent, and be mindful of your Creator. Those of you who have lost sight of the truth because you are distracted from it by transitory vanities, and have instead consumed your entire year with empty and futile pursuits that will not bring deliverance, look well into yourselves and improve your behavior. Let each of you forsake your evil ways and harmful thoughts. That's an excellent translation, I think. He is expanding on what we see in the Talmud that's been discussed over here. I'm sorry, in the Mishnah, right here. He discerns all our deeds. He is basically saying, this is the time to look and see what you're doing. And if you've lost sight of what you should be doing, this is the time to fix it and improve your behavior. Not just evil thoughts, which are probably the easiest things to at least acknowledge for yourself because they're so obvious. But if you've lost sight of the truth or distracted, then basically pay attention and try and make yourself better. He's basically saying, this is the time we really take stock of ourselves. And what is he using to connect this idea so brilliantly? He is saying, what tradition teaches us to take stock in ourselves? He's going all the way back to the origins. He's saying this was meant to be the whole time because the shofar implies the following: arise, you are fast asleep, awaken, you who slumber. The reason we blow the shofar is to announce, pay attention to what you're doing, what you've done, and do better. And so he's connecting it, basically saying several, he was from about, 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago. He's saying 2,000 years ago, they were already doing this. So he's kind of bringing it back to predating it and saying, hey, the shofar is what announces to us, wake up, arise from not your actual slumber, but your slumber or malaise in your behavior. Stop evil ways. And of course, that is probably not for most of us because most of us aren't evil. But it's stop your evil ways, but more appropriately for us, stop getting distracted from what you're supposed to do. Stop basing your life on vanities. Look back and pursue things that are not futile. So he's telling us basically, look at the year and get better. And that is a really great paragraph. You know what? I should use this paragraph more often. I'm going to use this paragraph for our holidays. Thank you, Stuart, for giving me that idea.
You're welcome.
You're the best. All right, so that was the Rambam. So as you can, Stuart.
I have just a quick question. Was the shofar used in the temple on a daily basis to, for example,
I have to wait
indicate
until
the time the sacrifice was to start?
let's see.
Now we don't know for sure if it was used for what it was used for. We do know it was used for some things. It was used to announce war. It was used to announce the beginning of the month. It was used to announce gatherings. Was it used in the temple? It certainly could have been. I'm seeing some mistakes I made here. So, but that's a good question. There's a lot of debate as to what it was used for. It was probably used for a wide variety of things. Think about it. If you blow the shofar, people can hear you for a very far distance. But you had to be able to announce what you were doing. So what they meant by each blow is still debated. Like how many blows was this? How many blows was that? How many blows is this? How did they blow it? They probably fashioned their shofars very similarly to us because the way you fashion a shofar is not, super scientific. You take the horn, you heat it up, and you meld it. I mean, this is a science that predates Judaism. So we know the shofars were probably very similar looking. Were they used as musical instruments? Probably as well. Our shofar blower, Bubba Rosenthal, can play his shofar like a musical instrument, like a trumpet almost. So, yes, go ahead, Genevieve.
I was just being silly. Has anybody used it to wake up their kids in the morning?
I imagine I should probably do that because my daughter does not like to wake up. So let's go to Shai Agnon. If you haven't heard of him, one of the great Jewish writers of the modern age. As of so many great writers, he came from the 19th century in Eastern Europe, and where all of this incredible literature and really the basis in many ways for modern Jewish thought and literature and so many, and outside the Jewish world as well. He won the Nobel Prize, and obviously lived in Israel before it was Israel, during the Ottoman time, and then also lived there after it became a country. And he wrote a little bit, the 10 reasons for sounding the ram's horn. Wrote our master Saadia Gaon. Saadia Gaon was the greatest sage possibly of the late first millennium CE. Lived in the 9th century in what is now Iran. There are 10 reasons why the Creator, be blessed, commanded us to blow the ram's horn on Rosh Hashanah. The first is because Rosh Hashanah marks the beginning of creation, which we just talked about, on which the Holy One, be blessed, created the world and reigned over it. Kings do the same, who have trumpets and horn, blow it to let it be known and heard everywhere when the anniversary of the beginning of their reign falls. So we, on Rosh Hashanah, accept the kingship of the Creator. Be blessed, thus said David, with trumpets and sounds of the horn. Shout ye, I don't like that. Shout you before the ruler. I don't like the ruler. I'm going to change this as we speak, as it should have been done before. The Lord, it's another word for Lord in masculine. I guess eternal. All right. The second reason is that since Rosh Hashanah is the first of the 10 days of Tshuva,
I don't think Eva is here.
yeah, that is repentance. The ram's horn is blown to announce their beginning, as though to warn that all who desire to turn in Tshuva turn now, and if you do not, you have no reason to cry injustice. Kings do the same. For they warn the populace in the decree, and whoever violates the decrees after the warning complains unheeded. So what we see here, just what we saw from Maimonides. Be better. Third reason, remind us of our stand at the foot of Mount Sinai, as it said in Exodus. The voice of the horn waxed louder and louder, in order that we may take upon ourselves that which our forefathers took upon themselves when they said, we will do and obey. So they're hearkening to the blowing of the shofar when God came at Mount Sinai. As you said, still trying to find ways to connect everything. Okay, so I have to make it now. Sorry, guys, for postponing. I have another Zoom here. I told them that I would be late. So the fourth reason, to remind us of the words of prophets, which were compared to a ram's horn. As it said, then whosoever heareth the sound. Somebody needs to go in and edit this. Sorry. Stuart, I asked you to edit it for me. I don't know why you didn't do it. Oh my gosh. That was a joke, everybody. I'm blaming Stuart for something that he didn't do. That is whosoever heareth the sound of the horn and taketh not warning, if the sword come down and take him away, his blood shall be on his own head. Whereas if he had taken warning, he would have his head delivered his soul. In other words, take stock every year, because listen to the sound of the horn. It warns you. If you hear the horn and then you do things you shouldn't, it's your own fault, because the horn warned you. The fifth reason is to remind us of the destruction of the temple, as we read in Jeremiah. Because thou hast heard, o'er my soul, the sound of the horn, the alarm of war. When we hear the sound of the ram's horn, we beseech God to rebuild the temple. So we want to rebuild the temple. The sixth reason is to remind us of the binding of Isaac, who offered himself to heaven. We ought to be able to offer our lives for the sanctification of God. The seventh reason is that we hear the blowing of the ram's horn, we fear and tremble and bend our will to God. For such is the effect of the ram's horn, as we read in Amos. Shall the horn be blown in a city and people not tremble? In other words, if you hear the horn, it should scare you, or you should stand in awe before it, knowing you're supposed to be better. The eighth reason is to remind us it is the day of judgment, which we don't really see that phrase. It's in other places, but it's certainly not in the origins. The great day of the Lord is near. It is near and hasteth greatly, a day of horn and alarm. The ninth is that we gather the dispersed of Israel, so we can come together and say, a great horn shall blow, and they shall come that were lost in the land of Assyria. Who was lost in the land of Assyria? The 10 lost tribes. So it's a way to bring back everybody together. And to 10th, I wish I had David Letterman here. The 10th reason is to remind us of the revival of the dead. All you inhabitants of the world and you dwellers in the earth, when an ensign is lifted upon the mountain, see you, and when the horn is blown, hear you. So these are the 10 reasons for Rosh Hashanah and the blowing of the horn. So what we see is Rosh Hashanah originally was just the blowing of the horn, along with not working, and it's the seventh day, first day of the seventh month. As time has gone on, we've learned that it becomes the celebration of the creation of the universe, the day of judgment, that the horn that is blown is there to remind us to behave. And later we also know we're in preparation for the Day of Atonement. Michael.
You're muted.
Michael, you're still muted, buddy.
Okay, my bad. The Orthodox don't blow the shofar on Shabbat, yet the Torah says you should blow it on the first of the month. I mean, there's a contradiction there. And how did they come about doing this or not doing this?
Great question. So we know they blew the horn on Rosh Hashanah. It says it in the Bible. It's pretty obvious. They know they blew the horn on Shabbat. However, about 2,000 years ago, an edict became more and more popular until it became law, and that you do not play musical instruments on Shabbat. It came about when they were looking at what was done during the tabernacle, and there's various reasons for it. And so that edict supersedes in the many traditions in Judaism the edict for blowing the horn on Rosh Hashanah. So Shabbat supersedes Rosh Hashanah, and so blowing the ram's horn, so it cannot be done. So Rosh Hashanah is on the same day as Shabbat. So what has happened is what has become very popular is that a second day of Rosh Hashanah was added in Israel and in America so that you could blow the horn on that day. So if you can't blow it on the first day, you blow it on the second. There are other reasons they added the second day, but that's one of the main ones. So they will blow the horn on. Now the same issue is for Yom Kippur, because you don't blow the shofar on Yom Kippur, and Yom Kippur is often on a Saturday. We'll learn about that. Well, basically because you can't have 2 days that are so restrictive in a row. So Yom Kippur cannot be on a Friday, because then you can't prepare for the Sabbath. And it can't be on a Sunday, because you couldn't prepare for the breaking the fast because of the Sabbath. So if Yom Kippur is on a Sunday, it'll be on a Saturday. And we'll learn more about that in a little bit. That was a good question. So if you go to Orthodox or conservative synagogue, they will not blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah if Rosh Hashanah is a Saturday, which it is not this year. All right.
Yeah,
Michael.
yeah, except I mean, I mean, maybe I'm getting into the weeds, but, you know, except that since the requirement is in Torah and the law is man-made, shouldn't Torah, you know, supersede or come before, you know, some man-made rules?
Torah will come before that in all cases. Stuart.
Yeah, we have to remember also that Torah, when it's talking the first time about Rosh Hashanah, says that thou shalt not do servile work. So the conundrum gets set because the rabbis and
Yeah.
whenever
Their wisdom.
decided that playing an instrument risked work. The
Exactly.
idea being that if the instrument breaks down in some way, a lot of these were string instruments, for example, you had to repair it to play it, but you couldn't repair it because it was holiday. So we now end up with the Torah being self-contradictory because of a rabbinic ruling.
Now,
Which probably would imply that the rabbinic ruling is wrong, but that gets into a whole other set of weeds.
it does, except again,
Yeah.
it does not say in the text anyway that you blow the shofar on Shabbat. If Rosh Hashanah, so it doesn't specifically say if Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbat, you blow it. It doesn't say that you don't. There are ways to look at it from various perspectives. And if they had an example in the Torah where, for instance, Moses is celebrating Rosh Hashanah on Shabbat and they blow the shofar, that would be definitive evidence that it's okay, but we do not have that. We very easily can say it says blow the shofar on the seventh month, first day. However, don't blow it on Shabbat. Just they didn't write it in because it was assumed. There's no reason to write it in there because everybody knows you don't blow the shofar on Shabbat. So it's very easy to say this. So there's different ways of looking at it. So once musical instruments were taken away, you can easily say that. And so also there are various texts that say, as Judaism progresses, we have the opportunity to make certain decisions, always based on Torah. And so that gives a lot of leeway to human beings. It's kind of like legality. You can use the law in a variety of ways. So for us, we may say it's very obvious. We see musical instruments in Psalms with King David. It is not hard to find musical instruments being played in the Torah or the Bible. But again, there are ways to say they didn't do it on Shabbat, or God has decided that since the temple is destroyed, we can only do it in the temple on Shabbat. I mean, there's different ways to look at it. But you're right. It makes it great. It's great because it means we debate everything.
Well, that's a news bulletin.
Which is really the basis for everything in Judaism. Please argue with me. What, you're not arguing with me? What's wrong with you? You think I'm right? Of course I'm right, but you're not supposed to think that. Two people agree, that is the worst thing in Judaism. The disembodied hand connected to nothing that we'll call wrong.
You'll pardon me for bringing this up, but on the 14th, when everyone was here for the meeting, who's it?
Oh, that's Eva's. Eva's raising her hand.
All right.
We have it.
We have it.
And in case you find any cash around, that was mine.
No,
Well,
it was
He donated it.
Yeah, the funny thing is I accidentally left my cash in Ron's wallet. So, and in his bank accounts. And I left some jewelry in your safe deposit box, Arlene, just to let you know. So what we're going to do now is go over Yom Kippur, which biblically has one very obvious difference from Rosh Hashanah. And as you can see, Leviticus 23, that's the same chapter. You know, I hate this font right here. I'm changing this font. You know why? Because I don't think Arial works well with this. I'm going to make it Georgia. There we go. That looks better. Leviticus is the same place we just read about Rosh Hashanah. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Howbeit, which I purposely kept in there because I love that word. On the 10th day of the 7th month, and the day of it is the day of atonement. There shall be a holy convocation to you, and you shall afflict your souls, and you shall bring an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And you shall do no manner of work in the same day, for the day of atonement, to make atonement for you before the Lord your God. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And whosoever soul it be that does not any manner of work on that day, the soul will I destroy from amongst his people. He shall do no manner of work. It shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest. So what we see right away is a major difference in this. What do we see Yom Kippur called? What is Rosh Hashanah called in the Torah? It is called nothing. There is no name for the holiday. It just says the first day of the 7th month. What do we see Yom Kippur is called in the Torah? Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur is actually called Yom Kippur in the Torah. That is a big difference there. It says, you shall afflict your souls. Everything else beyond this is the same. What I mean, yes, you've got make atonement. We already know that. Shall not be afflicted. You can't be afflicted. We already know that. But what are some of the things that are common? No work. No work. It shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest. What's in the red is for all the Jewish holidays in the Torah. All the major Jewish holidays, including Shabbat, have the same thing. That's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Passover, Shavuos, and Shabbat. So those 6 holidays are, you don't do work, it's a day of Sabbath rest. However, the difference for Rosh Hashanah is you blow the horn. That's the only difference. The difference for Yom Kippur is it's a day of atonement. You shall afflict your souls to make atonement, and whoever's soul is not afflicted shall be cut off from his people. Oops, that should be. All right, whatever. So what we're finding here is that there's a little bit more to go on here, but not that much. We know now that on the 10th day of the month, it's a day of atonement where you're atoned, which is obviously why they deduce that the Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment, that you're atoned after you're judged. The really difficult passage here, because, I mean, besides the fact that you're atoning, and that's very general, atonement is very general. You shall afflict your souls is very general. What does afflict your souls mean? That is very, very vague. Day of Atonement is vague too, but I know what atone for my sin is. That means I sinned. I got to make atonement. I got to do something to atone, but afflict my soul. Flossie.
Where does fasting come in?
That is a very apropos question. What did we eventually decide afflict your soul means?
Fasting.
Flossie just gave us the answer.
Without knowing.
The answer is fasting. Afflict your souls eventually became fasting. Now, how did they get fasting from afflict your souls? That is the question. When we think about it, it seems pretty logical. Every human being every Jewish person has to afflict their soul. We all have to do the same thing. The problem is we're all very different. If afflict our soul means take away something we want to do, that is very general. My son likes to play with cars. I like to dress up and go to science fiction conventions. Everybody has their own likes and dislikes, and that's not really affecting your soul. How can we affect our soul if our soul is boundless? Well, the idea came to be that there is one thing that all human beings do. And if we don't do it, it is going to be problematic. And that is eat. We all human beings eat, except for vampires.
Oh, gee.
And that's a whole nother story. All human beings eat. So if you take away food, we're all going to feel it. And since the soul is housed in the body, but the key to the brilliance of fasting is it is something we can all do and we'll feel it, but it will not have a lasting effect on us unless we have some health problems or pregnant or children. So everyone who's a healthy adult can fast safely, but they will feel it. And Judaism very specifically says if you cannot do it safely, don't do it. That's number one. But for most human beings who are healthy and adults, we can go 25 hours without eating or drinking and survive and thrive and not have any lasting impact. So it works for everybody. And that's why it became so brilliant of a way to afflict our souls, because we can all do it. It's a physical manifestation of atonement, because when we are not eating, we're hungry and we think about it. We think about the hunger, the cramps, the thirst, and that leads us to say, oh, I'm atoning for my sins. It is a very tangible reminder, just like the blowing of the shofar wakes us up as a tangible reminder that we have to be better people. But it does not say fasting anywhere in the Torah. It just, now, what you can also deduce possibly, and this is impossible to prove, in ancient times, afflict your souls could have been a euphemism for something we don't know. It could have been a euphemism for fasting, but it could have been a euphemism for something else. We don't know what it was. Afflict your souls could have been like raining cats and dogs. I know raining cats and dogs means it's raining a lot. In 10,000 years, they're going to say, oh my God, are people throwing dogs and cats in the air? What's going on here? That doesn't make any sense. So it could be some sort of saying that everybody there knew, but they didn't take the time to explain to us because everybody knew it. It's like explaining who the Beatles are. I don't need to tell anybody here who the Beatles are because they're such a famous rock group. But in a million years, 10,000 years, they may not be so famous anymore. And people are going to say, why are they referring to Beatles? Are they eating them? Are they praying to them? So again, we don't know, but eventually afflict your soul came to mean fasting, which, by the way, there is not a small possibility afflict your souls meant fasting back then. It certainly could have, but we don't know. From the Talmud, Rosh Hashanah, the tractate Rosh Hashanah. This is really a difficult rabbi name. Rabbi Kruspadai said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. On Rosh Hashanah, 3 books are opened. One for the thoroughly wicked, one for the thoroughly righteous, and one for the intermediates. The thoroughly righteous are immediately inscribed and sealed for the book of life. The thoroughly wicked are immediately inscribed and sealed for death. The intermediates hang in the balance from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur. If they are found worthy, then they are inscribed for life. If not, then they are inscribed for death. Now, this death and life thing is not meant to be literal, I don't think, because they knew bad people do not die because they misbehave. It's more meant to be ethereal or having to do with something else. But what's important to us is this. There are three groups here: thoroughly wicked, thoroughly righteous, and those in the middle. 99.9999% of human beings are in the third category. 99.99999%. There's a belief that there are truly righteous people on earth, but at one time there's a thought that there are only 70 out of today would be 8.8 billion people. So out of 8 billion people, there are 70 righteous. Even if you do it through just Judaism, out of 15 million, there are 70. That is a very tiny percentage. And the wicked is maybe a higher percentage, but thoroughly wicked is a very difficult club to reach, because even bad people love their children. So even bad people support their families. To be thoroughly wicked is really difficult. And to achieve that, you really have to work hard. And there are people who do achieve it, but it's not the number we would think. In Judaism, the thoroughly wicked are a very small percentage. Haman, people like, who killed, who are just terrible people on a level. We might think of Stalin or Hitler or those type of people maybe, but even they may not. There may be some redeeming quality we don't know about. That's really hard for us to tell as human beings. And so we are almost all in the middle. The irony, of course, of the righteous, the thoroughly righteous, one of my favorite ironies in Judaism. As soon as I say, wait a minute, maybe I'm one of the thoroughly righteous, automatically that disqualifies me. Exactly, Michael. The minute you think at any time in your lifetime that you are one of the righteous, truly righteous, that means you're not. It's pretty ironic, but I think we all understand truly righteous people are very difficult to find. So we will probably all go our lifetimes without meeting anyone like that. And we all meet a lot of really good people. I know some people who are just veritable angels, but to be thoroughly righteous, that is a different level. So I think the three things there are meant to be not ironic, but just poignant, that we're all in the middle. From the Pesachta Rabbati, which is a midrash. Midrash is trying to explain Judaism in ways that you haven't, usually often through stories. The Holy One, blessed be He, said to the people of Israel, repent during these 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, and I shall acquit you in judgment and create you anew. If you repent during these days and stand before me on Yom Kippur, then even if your transgressions extend from the earth to the heavens, I shall whiten them as snow. It's a beautiful way to teach us something essential. This may be the most important point in all of Judaism. And that is, we're all in the middle. There is nothing any of us can do that creates a way for us to enter the thoroughly wicked category. There is nothing we can do that's so bad that we can't repent and find forgiveness for God. No matter what we did, how terrible it is, and we know people have committed terrible crimes in the world, there is still forgiveness. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to go to jail or there's not consequences for your action. It means that God can forgive your transgressions. That is essential. It sounds terrible because we know people who do really, truly terrible things that we don't think are redeemable. This is not really for them. This is for us, because we as human beings judge ourselves harshly sometimes. And we can think, I've done something so terrible, and it may have been terrible, that I am not redeemable. And Judaism says that is not true. Everybody is redeemable. There are consequences on this world, and there are consequences possibly in the next, but everybody is redeemable. And Yom Kippur reminds us every year that we can do better. So, all right. We'll continue with Yom Kippur, and we'll do Sukkot and the various holidays within it next week. Any questions or thoughts? Introduce everybody. Thank you again. I didn't introduce everybody at the beginning. Thank you to Gail and Michael. I'm sorry, Ron, you had a question.
Yeah, before we go, Eva, what is your address?
No, don't give it right now. Don't give it because we're on YouTube. I'll take us. I'm going to take us off YouTube, and then Ron will let you get it from her.
All
So
right.
bye to Gail, Michael, Genevieve, Eva, Paul, Stuart, Flossie, Arlene, and Ron. And we will see you next week, same time. Remember, next Monday at 5 o'clock, I start the 6-part series on the history of Judaism. And that will be on YouTube, Zoom, and in person in probably the social hall.
I have a question.
Yes, who had a question there? Was that Diana? Hey,
Yes.
Diana.
Yes, I'm sorry. I came in late because I'm at work right now. But I still
Good for
want
you. I love it.
information.
Studying at work. Yes, she's doing it. Go,
So-
Diana. What's your question?
The part that I missed, will it be available on YouTube so I can go back and look at it?
Yes, just email me and I'll sell it. It's on YouTube automatic. And you don't have to. You just go to the Mikvah Israel YouTube page and it's there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, guys. It is a pleasure, and I hope everyone has a wonderful start to the holidays. I'm going to go off YouTube now, and then Eva, I'll let you. You can give Ron your address. So long, everybody. We're going to go off YouTube.